Hello, I'm Sarah. This is Hardcover Hearts. And yeah, hi. It's been a little bit. But I've missed this. I've missed talking to you. I've missed communicating with you. I've missed the community. I've missed reading itself. And so before I begin with a bunch of books that I want to talk about, I just wanted to thank anyone who has reached out and asked me how I'm doing, if I'm coming back, or indicated that they missed seeing me talk about books and missed the channel. I have every intent every single week to do this, and life has gotten away from me, but the moment is here. Let's jump right in and let's talk about some books. So the first thing I wanted to talk about was I had the experience of a lifetime. I got the chance to go to Japan, and I have always dreamt of going to Japan for a number of different reasons. And so this was just the right opportunity and the right timing and the right circumstances all kind of came together. And so with that, we just took off and we were gone for 12 days. 2 of those were traveling, so 10 days, 5 in Tokyo and 5 in Kyoto. And yes, I did get a chance to see Kazen from Always Doing, which was just such an utter delight, She just showed me all around. We had basically my second morning there. We just spent the entire morning wandering around, going to different shops, eating in the park, showing me everything. She was just a phenomenal, fantastic hostess. And I actually saw her when we came back to Tokyo as well. So thank you, Kazen, for all your warmth and hospitality. And I cannot wait until I come back again. And so I had a few, these are kind of a small mini collection I want to talk through. These are some books that I read in advance of, during, and then after. So the first book that I want to talk about, this is The Rainbow by Yasunari Kawabata. Just a gorgeous cover. This is a Penguin reissue. Translated by Hadyn Trowell. And it was written in the 1950s, 1950 to 1951, and it was serialized. This is just a beautiful, beautiful book set post World War II. Now, I read a lot between the wars and World War II literature, but most of it is based in the UK. And so it's been quite a discovery this year. I read with the Author Spotlight series, Simone de Beauvoir's a collection of her works. And The Mandarins is set right at, like kind of during and then in the tail end of the war into post-war. And the sense of, what's going to happen? What about all the ideals? Now that you can, in essence, remake society, what are you going to do with it? Very, very different in Japan, as you can imagine, with what happened in Hiroshima, with the bombing, the horrific bombing, and just kind of the psychic toll that I can only imagine existed in that culture. So I've been very interested in this literature of this specific time. And I thought this did such a great job. This is also unique because it's the story of 2 daughters. We have the father, Mizuhara, and Mizuhara is an older man. He's got adult daughters, and he lives with 2 of them. Asako is kind of the dutiful, good daughter. She is what we understand to be the last child. And Momoko is who we think to be the first child. Momoko is a little more defiant. She's more troubled. She's got more things going on. And most of it is because of feeling like an outsider in her family. The reason that is that her father never married her mother. Her mother died of suicide and was kind of taken into the home of the father and his new wife, who in essence was her stepmother. And she never really felt kind of embraced, and she didn't really have a mother figure. She always felt like a little bit at a distance from Asako's mother. Well, Asako finds out that there is yet a third daughter that has never been introduced to the family. And I guess this was from a relationship with a courtesan in Kyoto, and they live in Tokyo. Asako unintendedly kind of breaks chaos open when she goes searching for the missing sister. And she wants to reunite the sister in the family, maybe also show Momoko that she is more integrated than maybe she thinks. But this creates all sorts of ripple effects. It is very clear with this book that modern Japan post-World War II is very different than pre-war Japan. And there is a disquiet that comes from that. There's still a processing that has to be done that probably hasn't been done at the point when this book was released. It's a very quiet, dignified book. It's just very clear that there's a lot of confusion. There's a lot of misunderstanding of the nature and intentions of the different members of the family. I started this on the airplane. I was just completely entranced with the language, with the beauty, that reserve, that dignity in the telling. And there was a portion where the family leaves Tokyo and goes to Kyoto in search of the daughter. And I thought, I'm going to hold off. I didn't want to finish it on the airplane. I wanted to read those portions in Kyoto, and I'm very glad I did, because Kyoto is so atmospheric and it has such a different vibe, and I was able to really connect in with it, and it added a really lovely texture to the book. Then I read another book, and this was very, very different. This is contemporary. This book was written in 2007, and this is A Perfect Day to Be Alone by Nanae Aoyama. And someone recommended this, and I have to say it was a fantastic recommendation. So sorry if I can't remember who did recommend it. This is translated by, let me see, Jess Kirkwood. You'll find Jess Kirkwood translates a lot of Japanese fiction. This is, I mentioned this is contemporary, and it's very, very different in tone than the previous book. This feels more modern. We've got a young woman, late teens, early 20s. Her name is Chizu, and Chizu is, she's really going through it. She's sullen, surly, destructive, angry, cannot figure out what she wants to do with her life, just wants to be left alone. But her mother is moving away to China to take a job. And so she wants to move to Tokyo, but she has no money. She has no job. And so her mother sets her up with this woman that's like a very, very tenuous relationship, distant relative kind of person. And the woman is a 70-year-old woman, and her name is Ginkgo. And this is the most unnatural pairing. Ginkgo is a very interesting woman. It seems like she just knows herself, and she knows her life, and she lives the life that she wants to live. She has a boyfriend. They go out ballroom dancing. She has her patterns of how she lives, and seems to be very self-reliant. She's a little odd. She's a little quirky character, which brings in a lot of humor, but she's not looking to Chizu for anything. She's offering her a room in her home, and she lives in this little cottage that's right near a train station, and the platform is right nearby. And so she's just living her life, but she does this favor and brings this young girl into her home. What I liked about this is it's kind of a tender story. It ends up being a tender story that's not sentimental. I did not like Chizu. Chizu really irritated me. There's a sense of self-entitlement and selfishness that turned me off. But I also understood her decisions and what she was doing and why she was doing it. So it's really this young woman's coming of age and an exploration of loneliness, of friendship, and developing a sense of worth and self-esteem. So I like that it was unsentimental, but tender at the same time. So this was really good. Then I read a book earlier this year. When I was on vacation and we were taking a big long train ride, and I had found this in Copenhagen. And this is Seichō Matsumoto's Inspector Imanishi Investigates, with this stunning, stunning cover. And now this is translated by Beth Carey. And this was a reissue. This is that Penguin Classic. So the same cover, same style, same reprint as this one. Gorgeous. I'm really in love with this imprint right now. Now, Mstsumoto did a very famous book called Tokyo Express, and I've been wanting to read it, and even more so once I returned back to the United States, because trains feature and subways and bullet trains and the whole system, it just is so integral to Japanese life that I knew I needed to read it to kind of continue the vibes from vacation. Now, I have not found it yet in this imprint, but when I was in the UK, I think it was like the very last day, I was at the airport and they had one of those 2 for 3 deals. I scratched it off. I pulled off the sticker here, but I despise this cover. I literally have picked this book up so many times, but I hate the cover so much. But I'm so glad that I bought it because it's such a good book. It's a tiny little gem. And this is Tokyo Express by Seichō Matsumoto and translated by Jess Kirkwood. This is tiny, tiny, tiny little, but yeah, look how hideous that cover is. I don't like it. I don't like it. But so yeah, this is great. So the thing about Japanese mysteries is that it's more cerebral. It's very pared down. They take the procedural to the nth degree. Everything's about the refinement of the procedural. And there's often a point of view of one of the characters on the other side of the law. And so it's less of a whodunit, but how are they going to solve it type of mystery. In this case, we meet a man, Yasudo, and Yasudo is a businessman, a very important businessman, and he's going out to all the hostess clubs, and he brings the very powerful, very elite into these hostess clubs. And you know that he's a little shady because there's some kind of scandal going on about corruption and influence peddling, and you just have a feeling that he's involved in some way. And he invites 2 of the hostesses, not his favorite hostess, but 2 other hostesses to come meet him for lunch, which is something he's never done in the few years that he's been going to this specific hostess bar. He, the entire time, keeps looking at his watch. He very quickly says, okay, we have to go to the train station. Come with me. Just see me onto my train. Completely not something they would have expected. And so while they're on the platform, out of nowhere, he says, oh, look, isn't that? And he mentions the other hostess, his favorite hostess, who's actually across the platform. And they can see a little bit with a man. And it's very clear they're having a conversation, and they both get on the train together. And then his train comes and he gets on, he says goodbye to them and leaves. It's very, very fishy. So then we flip over to this small little community, and there's the discovery of 2 bodies in a cove. And it's deemed that they died by suicide. But everything feels a little too perfect. And so one of these kind of old, Columbo type is all I could kind of imagine, Japanese Columbo type. His name is Torigai. Torigai, he just doesn't think this is right. And everyone is kind of moving on and they think they've sewn it up and everything. But he's like, not so fast. And there's an aspect that bothers him just from a human psychology behavior perspective. And so he pushes on it. And they want to close the case. But then all of a sudden, someone more higher up from Tokyo, the Tokyo Police Division, shows up. and his name is Mahara. And Mahara really likes what this little piece of information. And he also has just a gut feeling that this isn't right. And he proceeds to become obsessed with this case and obsessed with how the fact that there's no way that these people were together. There's no way they were lovers, and there's no way that they died at their own hand. And so he goes on to prove it. And so much of the story is about the train system and the bureaucracy and the precision of the Japanese train system. This was great. It was really slim, nice little novel. I just, again, love Japanese mysteries for the precision, the refinement, the cerebralness to them, not a lot of intense emotion, but a lot of really thoughtful detective work. So yeah, it was just great. Then in something entirely different, I was watching something on Instagram. It was like the New Yorker had a reel. I think it was called A Book That Shaped My Reading Life. And Amber Tamlin, she's an actress and poet and writer. She was on, and she talked about this book that I just missed my radar. I don't know how it did, but it was from, I guess it was written in 2007, but it has the vibe of LA in the 90s. And the book is called Paint It Black. Now, it's from Janet Fitch, who wrote White Oleander, which I remember being like this big Oprah pick, and I've never read that, so let me know if you think I should. And then she also wrote these two novels that are kind of a set, duology on the Russian Revolution. The Revolution of Marina M, and then the Chimes of a Lost Cathedral. That were very intimate look at a young woman and her revolutionary zest and fervor and belief in a cause, and then watching it slowly disintegrate in front of her eyes. I thought it was very good, but it's just so different. It's such a different book. And so I'm kind of interested in how White Oleander fits in her pantheon of or her oeuvre. I decided to do this in audio because the actress Jennifer Jason Leigh did the narration. And I'm very glad I did, because she has this kind of laconic, subdued, a little disaffected, a little too cool, but irritated at everything kind of vibe that I think really, really, really worked for this book. So this book just kind of starts you off like bang with a punch. We meet Josie, and Josie is a muse. She's a nude model. She is in a relationship, lives in like this little, I think it's Laurel Canyon cottage, kind of out of the way, with her lover, this man named Michael Faraday. And Michael Faraday is the child of two very famous people that divorced when he was very young. His mother is a pianist, a very famous pianist who's often traveling, giving concerts. And the father is a writer who's just kind of taken off to parts unknown and kind of abandoned the family. And so she is kind of, in essence, the muse, and is helping Michael try to find his way, but is deeply, deeply in love with him. She gets a call from the police who say that a body has been found in a motel in the desert, and it's that of Michael Faraday, and what is her relationship to him. And that just propels the book into such interesting spaces, specifically interesting in terms of how we understand the relationship. Because of course it starts with this idyllic, he's the love of my life. How could this ever happen? We were deeply in love, into kind of the way that grief kind of changes and makes you remember certain things. And so we're seeing the relationship slowly changing and morphing as more painful truths get dealt with. And then we're also seeing her relationship with the mother, who really looks down on her, thinks of her as trashy and a waste of Michael's time, actually attacks her at the funeral, saying it was her fault. And they develop this very difficult, tenuous desperate relationship because of both of their needs to understand Michael. And the mother was very controlling, a very smothering, a very difficult woman. And it comes out in this relationship. So there's a lot of here. The writing is very, it's like over the top. It's like neon. There's a lot of energy in the book, a lot of pathos, a lot of high drama. And I think if I'd read it maybe in the 90s, I would have loved it. It would have been like, it was very, very fun to read, very fun to listen to, in the sense that it just had that, I don't know, that manic pixie vibe to it, from her head, from her perspective. It definitely put me in the vibe of LA in the 90s. Without a doubt. So the drugs and the wildness and the rock and roll and all of the angst and the despair and the fear of the future and all of that. So I thought it was really good. It was a really nice surprise. I usually, when I do backlisted books, I go way back, way back into the backlist, not so contemporary. So yeah, I found it very interesting. Then I have been meaning to kind of work my way through more of Rachel Cusk's work. I've read Outline, and I've decided it was time for Transit. So if you don't know anything about this series, it's really a way for Rachel Cusk to talk about the ways that women are not seen. So there's an assertion of feminism here, but it's refracted through stories that are told to her, stories of things that happen, and it's very subtle. It's not overt, but I've seen her speak, and she said that everything that she said in her previous works is here. It's just said by someone other than the main character. And all of a sudden it was considered a masterpiece. So it's like the things that women aren't allowed to talk about, when you put it in the mouth of somebody else, a different character, not yourself, all of a sudden it's wonderful, which is fascinating, right? So this is the story of Faye. It's the same character narrator from the first one, from Outline. In that one, she was on a Greek island and she was giving a seminar. And so we have the sense of being someone who's kind of going through something. She's having difficulty in her relationship with her husband and her family, and doing this lecture, this series seminar in a foreign country. So a lot of displacement. She continues that theme in that Faye now has moved to London, she's getting divorced from their children's father, and the children are away. And so while she has the time where the kids aren't there, she's going to renovate the apartment. She has very difficult neighbors downstairs, and she can hear everything that's said. They hear everything of hers, and so she wants to create a buffer, kind of more soundproof the floors. But of course, that makes them even crazier. They can't see that this is just temporary to get to a place that's mutually beneficial for everyone. And because she's leading these seminars in fiction, with adults. She's in essence almost like a therapist as well. And in this one of them, she's less stuck and just listening to each of these stories. And she's out and about. She's meeting people. She's meeting someone that she was going to go on a date with before. She's meeting a friend. So she's kind of reclaiming little aspects of her life and trying to make sense of what it's going to be like. At the same time, listening to their stories, kind of pulling their stories in. It's very smart. It's very sharp focused, very absorbing, like really interesting writing. I just dive right in whenever I read any of hers. And I'm really curious, what is she going to do different in the third of the trilogy to kind of build off of this progression. And I think the third one doesn't have Faye in it, but we'll see. I'm not sure. So yeah, looking forward to reading that one. Then the last thing I finished was Scaffolding. Now, this was by Lauren Elkin, and I did it in two forms. So I started in audio, was really enjoying it in audio, but there is around 2/3 of the way through, there's a change in narration and a flip of time. So this is the story, in essence, of Anna. Anna is a therapist, also doing a renovation out in a moment of crisis, doing a renovation on her apartment. I don't know what this is about. What does it say about the modern woman? Is it that we have money, and so as we're going through crisis, we're also trying to change our environment and kind of be different? I don't know. Make it more I don't know what it says, but it's just interesting that both books were dealing with that. And both are fairly cerebral books that bring in philosophy and other ideas as well. But she is a therapist, and she's going through a crisis. She had a miscarriage, and it's really kind of pulled her apart at the seams. And her husband has taken a job in London, and so he's not there. And he keeps trying to get her to come to London, but she's a Parisian. She doesn't want to leave Paris. She loves her apartment. She loves her neighborhood. But she's really struggling. She's really struggling. One day she meets Clementine, and Clementine is new in the building, and Clementine has a boyfriend who's not often there. And so they just form this bond, and it's very clear that something happened to Clementine too, where she was also going through some mental health crises. But she seems to be maybe more ahead of the game than our narrator, than Anna. So we meet them, we meet their friendship. It's a really intense friendship, and they go out at night and they put up graffiti about, it's more like they're wheat pasting different feminist messages out into the world. And this is kind of like as Me Too is coming up in Paris, and they're kind of coming into that and really pressing on that. So that's one storyline. And there's a connection that they have that they're not aware of that becomes evident a little later. Then we flip to another timeline, and it's the 70s in Anna's exact apartment. And it's a different couple that are, in essence, going through kind of the similar, if same, challenges. Questions of fidelity, questions of morality, the question of monogamy. I don't even think they're even saying open relationships. I think there's just this question of freedom. What is freedom, and how does it manifest, and how do people have it, and how do they maintain it in relationships? I think I see how having that other storyline created like this ghost of ripples that happened, that kind of were left in the apartment that then Anna had to kind of deal with. So it is kind of this continuation, but it was tenuous. I thought both stories worked. I just don't know that they needed to be there for the book to work. So I'd love to know, if you've read this book, what were your thoughts on that? It had philosophy, it had Paris, it had feminism, it had a lot of sexual tension, a lot of history, a lot of conflict. This is a book I can tell that I'll be thinking about a lot. Okay, I've spoken so much. Let me kind of get to what I'm currently reading. For the current Author Spotlight series, we're reading Isabel Colegate, and we're reading Orlando King. We've just got through the first third of it. And I noticed something in these two books specifically. This is the other one I've just started. This is Taper for Two, Amor Towles. He wrote A Gentleman in Moscow, which I absolutely loved. But there's a writing style that both of these are borrowing from, which is, it feels like very cinematic. It's not always built in reality. There's the kind of set scenes. Time moves very strangely. There's a fable-like quality to that. And today I asked someone in our group, I said, what is that? It's not a fable. It's something where it doesn't matter that things aren't exactly true. It doesn't matter that things stretch credulity, but it's a style of maybe feels like an old-fashioned style of storytelling. Definitely existed in A Gentleman in Moscow. you had to kind of stretch credulity to imagine some of those things. But the writing was so good that it kind of took you along anyway. And so someone said it's a pageant. So kind of like Orlando from Virginia Woolf, something that feels like it's not necessarily that it's surrealism or fantasy, but there is that space between fantasy and reality that this kind of inhabits for the sake of a good story. And so I'd love to know, have you heard of that phrase? And is there something else that just comes to mind for this kind of storytelling? I would love to hear your thoughts. But so this one is the story of a young man who was raised on an island, kind of adopted by an Oxford Don who's renounced the world, and he lives on this little island in France. When he's getting older and he realizes his young ward, his adopted son, needs to go out in the world and see the world, and so he sends him with letters of introduction to a couple people, but he doesn't tell him who his father is. And so he goes out into the world and with these letters of introduction, and immediately is kind of seen as one of the right types and kind of taken under the wing, and proceeds to have this very fabled, wonderful meteoric rise. He's one of those people, everybody kind of loves him. Everyone just kind of is enchanted by him. Also reminds me of right now the Any Human Heart by William Boyd, this kind of cradle to death story. Also had that fable quality, right? So far so good. Again, we're about a third of the way through. As I mentioned, I started this table for two. These are stories by Amor Towles. I really like his writing. I loved A Gentleman in Moscow. And the first one I really, really enjoyed. There is something about that type of writing that I don't always love, but when it works, man, it really works for me. And then I keep getting this out, and then for some reason I'm not getting to it. Sally Rooney, Intermezzo. So I started this in audio, liked it, but I felt like maybe I want to read it myself. Tried to get it out on digital copy, and it didn't go to the Kindle. It was just an e-publishing form, which I get why, but it was very hard to read, the formatting. And then finally got a copy, and the writing is so small. So yeah, those are all nits, but I'm also just, I don't know if I'm going to get on with it. I don't know. So let me know, should I crack this open? That's it for now. This has been very long. Thank you so much for watching. I would love to know in the comments, what have you been reading? Is there anything that you think that I would love? Any of these that you've read that you had any feelings about? I would love to know all of it. Have a very wonderful day, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.